obsessed. I kind of was able to predict part of it, but not the whole thing. That's what the entire book felt like. Was like, well, who is she actually in love with? Yeah, she's married to this guy, but she doesn't seem to really love him. Taking her husband out. And I don't mean to dinner. Well, hello, I'm Erica. I am Odd. And welcome back to another reading wrap up. I am gonna be straightforward, totally honest with you guys about this reading wrap up. All but one book is Frida McFadden. Here's what happened. I got obsessed. I got deeply obsessed. It's becoming a problem, but I am determined to make it through sort of, hopefully, her entire collection by the end of 2026. I kind of decided that last month and it really took hold, but I promise May's reading wrap up will have more than just her. I pinky promise. I just fell down a rabbit hole and I couldn't stop, and honestly, it got me through. Today is April's reading wrap up. I did read quite a few books. So I again read 6 books this month. I'm trying to get it up to 7. 6 seems to be a pretty steady number for me and I'm okay with it. Let me scooch farther back on my bed. There we go. I need more lumbar support. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first book that I read in April was The Inmate. Now I gave this book 4 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I kind of was able to predict part of it, but not the whole thing. I will say I've noticed that some of Frida's books are more predictable than the others. However, my best friend really liked this book, The Inmate. So I figured I would start April off with that one. And this basically centers around Brooke Sullivan, who's a nurse practitioner. And when she was in high school, she actually had to watch her best friends get taken out by her boyfriend at the time. Kid, sort of the wrong side of the tracks type, named Shane. Now they were high school sweethearts, even though some of her friends didn't like them necessarily together. This is where our story starts, is her witnessing that, and she has all this time believed that her high school sweetheart took out her best friends and then tried to take her out as well. So that's sort of the prologue to all of the events. Cut to, we are in present day. Cut to present day in the book. It's about 10 years later and she moves back to her hometown to be a nurse practitioner for the local prison where, yes, her high school sweetheart happens to be. And tagging along with her, you guessed it, her son and his son. So it's definitely a book full of like juicy secrets and a lot of things coming to light. This one was more like small town whodunit vibe. I really enjoyed it. The absolute twist at the end, the epilogue, really like, it didn't throw me, but I was kind of like, okay, I knew it. I knew it. I had a feeling this is the way that all this was gonna go. I had a feeling that this was how this book was sort of going to wrap up. I just didn't know exactly how. 4 stars. Would recommend. I see why it's one of my best friend's favorites. And if you're curious, she gave it 5 stars. Okay, now we have the book Do You Remember by Frida McFadden. This is about Tess Strebel, who wakes up every morning and doesn't know where she is. Tess wakes up every single morning and finds herself next to a handsome stranger that she doesn't know, who isn't her fiance she said goodnight to the night before, and with a very large scar on her head, and is then informed by a letter in her own handwriting that she was in a terrible accident and the man next to her is her husband, and her and her ex-fiance broke up for various reasons. Just trust her on that and just try to enjoy your day. And so at this entire book, we are spending time with Tess as she tries to figure out her life now. Who's around her? Is she feeling scared that day? Is she wakes up and she doesn't like pomegranate juice that people keep telling her that she normally likes. And her dog is actually named after a bird that her ex-fiance had, but she loves this dog. However, this dog hates her husband. And as she moseys throughout her day, she learns that there's locks on the doors because sometimes she tends to wander because of her brain injury. And she is looked after by a caretaker every day because of her injury. And so a lot of this is following Tess, trying to figure out, why doesn't she like pomegranate? Why does she keep having pen on her upper thigh? Why is she not getting better? I described this book as like, I think I said it in my review, a dark 50 First Dates meets Memento. That's how it felt. And I love the movie Memento. I watched it in high school and I think I watched it again in college for one of my film classes. But that's what the entire book felt like. Was like, well, who is she actually in love with? Yeah, she's married to this guy, but she doesn't seem to really love him. And why are some of the things not making sense anymore? And by the time you get to the end of the book, the main reveal of how her head injury and all of it came to be and why she keeps forgetting everything was a ride. it was shocking. I gave this book 5 stars. If you're somebody like me who did enjoy the movie Memento or 50 First Dates or sort of these amnesia-based movies, I think that you're really gonna enjoy this one too. Still very enjoyable, and I got really sucked into it of like, what is going to happen? Who are we going to see next? From her past, from her present. It's all of these sort of moving parts of like, what is true? And you really feel like Tess as you read it. Frida did a really good job of giving Tess this voice that you kind of start to feel like, okay, what is this day? Nothing's making sense. What's going on? And it's really submersive in that way. And it's sort of a nice little spin on sort of an unreliable narrator as well. Very much enjoyed that one. Next up, we have The Tenant by Frida McFadden. Now this book, it's the first Frida book that I've read that is truly from the jump, from the perspective of a man. I don't think I've read a book really by her that starts with the perspective of a man. Usually throughout her books, maybe during some plot twists, you'll get the perspective of one of the male characters, but this was one that truly was centered around him. Centered around Blake and his fiance. Blake recently lost his job due to them suspecting he was embezzling, I believe. Blake is let go from his job, he's fired, and they just bought this house. They don't know how they're gonna make rent, and he wants to afford this very lavish life for himself and his fiance, so they decide to rent out a room to Whitney. Things start out good enough, but as time goes on, Blake and Whitney start to really butt heads. And as he starts to blow up about little things that Whitney is doing around the house, Whitney starts to feel very unsafe. So Blake really spends his time trying to figure out how he can sort of get Whitney out of the house without any sort of backlash from her or his fiance. He's trying to figure out how to get a job. It's all of these life stressors of affording his house while also having to tolerate this person who seems to want to see nothing but bad things for Blake. That's all I'm gonna say about it because this was such a good twist. This was on the same level as Dear Debbie for me. And I put that in my review because Dear Debbie was a 6-star for me. Now, while this wasn't a 6-star, this was a 5-star for me. I had the same reaction to the plot twist of I really did not see this coming, and it really threw me for a loop, and I had sort of no idea who was going to be the source of all of these mishappenings in Blake's life, but I really enjoyed the twist, and it was one where it wasn't too like insane or implausible. It kind of made perfect sense. I really enjoyed Blake's character growth throughout this book. I really enjoyed his growth as a person and how his values sort of changed and how these trials and tribulations throughout these months of his lives have really changed like his morals and his character. As well as Whitney. I really enjoyed the twist with Whitney as well. Finding out about Whitney's background as well, and especially I loved the epilogue of this book. It was just a nice little cherry on top. So I did give this 5 stars. If you are looking for something that is similar to Dear Debbie, this is the book. Okay, next we have Do Not Disturb by Frida McFadden. I promise the next book is going to be the one that isn't Frida, and then the last one is Frida. I know, this is a lot. I'm sorry. I was in such a Frida mood. Anyways, Do Not Disturb by Frida McFadden is about Quinn Alexander. And now this is not a spoiler. This is quite literally the premise to the entire book. But if you want to go in blind, this is your warning to skip ahead. We open the book and Quinn has taken her husband out. And I don't mean to dinner. That is how the book opens, is that she has done this horrible thing and now she is essentially running from the consequences of that when she gets caught in a snowstorm and has been snowed in and forced to wait at a motel, where she meets Nick Baxter, who happens to own the motel and the shutdown restaurant out back with his wife, where his wife's health is failing her, so she spends her days in her wheelchair in front of the window looking down upon the motel. This is the premise for the book. Is that Quinn is snowed in at this motel. It's only a matter of time before somebody finds her husband. This is a ticking clock. Meanwhile, we then follow the storyline of her sister, who is also looking for Quinn, trying to figure out what is going on. This book has about 3 different narrators. It has Quinn, Nick's wife, whose name is escaping me, but she has one, and Quinn's sister, whose name is also escaping me, but she has one. Throughout this book, we are seeing 3 different perspectives of this sister who is worried sick, trying to throw the police off of her sister's trail, this sister who's trying to get out of town as soon as she can, and this woman looking up from her home onto the motel watching her husband do some maybe not greatest things in the entire world. There's also a fun neighbor that reads tarot cards. I like her a lot, but I digress. And this one you very much piece together from every single person's different perspective, and I really enjoyed that sort of puzzle piece book in that way. Now the motel is called the Baxter Hotel. Obviously it's similar to the Bates Motel, and this entire story does have it has the Hitchcock classic psycho feel to it from the Bates Motel. It is very much, if you watched Bates Motel or Psycho, whichever one, I highly recommend this one. I had a fun time with it. It's like a snowstorms too, so it felt more like Bates Motel meets The Shining maybe. So I really, really enjoyed this book. And again, I just gave that 4 stars. Moving on to the next book that isn't Frida McFadden. But the good news is we only have one after this. So, Player Misconduct by Kenneth King centers around Dr. Kendall, the team physician, and Oleski, the hockey player. This is a part of the Hawkeyes Rookie series. As we know, I'm making my way through this. I did an entire video on the Hawkeyes series. You can go watch that. However, this is the Rookie series following that series. The series is slowly coming out, so I'm slowly making my way through it. I will do a full video on this series as well. However, this is the only book that I read for this month as a part of that series. I got back into my hockey romance era. Thank God. I feel like I just went through a phase for a couple weeks of just thrillers, and I was like, I need the romance back. I found a good balance between thrillers, scary, and romance books and hockey this month. However, this is a pretty cut and dry hockey romance, as is the entire Hawkeyes series. The Hawkeyes series and the Hawkeyes Rookie series is a comfort series. You read it when you want to know exactly what's going to happen. You want a feel-good romance movie that maybe has some twists and turns here and there, but at the end of the day, you know everything's going to be fine. That's what I always recommend this series for. I will say, while I enjoyed some of the plot twists in this book as to how the ex-husband comes into play, one bed trope comes into play as well. It has an accidental pregnancy trope. Now, we know that I hate books with accidental pregnancy tropes. However, there are some exceptions. This was one of them. I don't think that this plotline would have worked if she hadn't gotten pregnant. The only way that this would have worked and would have made sense for everything to end up like it did is because of the fact that she's pregnant. So, while I hate it as much as the next person, and that's why I only give it 4 stars and not 5. It wasn't the worst. I think it was done well, and it is a 4-star for me. I really enjoyed it. Also deals with a horrible ex, which we love some drama for that. However, this book was very fun. It was very good. I love going back into that world of the Hawkeyes world and seeing all of the different characters that were in the series before and maybe some of the books in this series before. And I'm really enjoying the fact that we get to see a whole nother side to the Hawkeyes series. I'm glad that she decided to do this Rookie series. I am very much enjoying it. I highly recommend it to you. It's just a wonderful little hockey romance. It's light and fluffy, just a great time. The last book was, yes, you guessed it, a Frida McFadden book, The Crash by Frida McFadden. Again, centered around a snowstorm. Man, I don't know what got into me, but this is centered on a snowstorm and a woman named Tegan who is pregnant. And she essentially is driving to go see her brother and gets into an accident while traveling to her brother's home. She's then rescued by this what she describes as just a very large, scary looking man. How I pictured him was sort of like a Hagrid situation. I'm going to tell you right now, I had a good feeling about this guy from the moment I met him. No matter how she described him, I said, that's a gentle giant. I feel it in my bones. And I sort of clocked this book from the beginning because this woman, she gets rescued by this man. She is brought into his home until they can wait out the snowstorm, where the wife, who happens to be a nurse, is looking after her because she has hurt her ankle. The entire book is set I believe it's only 4 days. We are seeing her 4 days spent in this basement trying to figure out when the plows will come, when they can get out, if she is in labor, how soon can she get to the hospital. And it has a nice subplot as well with the neighbor next door sort of tying in. I did give this 4 stars, even though it was a tad bit predictable. I did enjoy it. Here's what I will say. Read the trigger warnings for it. It deals with very, very, very heavy subjects that would be triggering for a lot of people. I know I'm usually a person who's like, you're an adult, you're gonna look up the trigger warnings or you're not, because that's how I am. It's a mystery thriller book, so a lot of times that kind of goes hand in hand. However, with this one, I feel so inclined as to say, hey, this book's super heavy. So just be cautioned. It's a really good book. but just be cautioned going into it. It wasn't really my favorite. If I wanted to be, okay, if I'm not being generous, 3.5. If I'm not being generous, 3.5. However, 4-star because I did have a good time reading it. Was it her best work? No. But did I still have a good time? Yeah, I did. This isn't a spoiler because it happens literally at the beginning. She refers to her baby as little Tuna and thinks that she can hear her. That gets annoying because it'll be this very serious situation that this woman is narrating, and then she'll suddenly say in a baby voice, "Mama, I don't feel so well." And it's like she's hearing the baby's voice in her head. And this was happening before the accident, so it's not like a brain trauma thing. It's just like a this woman's unwell sort of thing. That wasn't my favorite. I think I could have really done without that, and it would have, I think, been a much better story without it, because then it's sort of living in this reality and not in this woman's head of like, is she okay? Should we call somebody? It's a good read, but again, very heavy. Proceed with caution. But that is the last book that I read in April. So it was a very heavy Freedom Month. I understand that. And thank you for hanging out with me and hearing me yap about it this whole time. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Let me know what your favorite read of April was. I love to hear about your guys' reads, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.